I don't know if you guys expected like a angry animated rant or some kind of impassioned post-game show from Larry K and the Night Watch channel tonight, but you're not going to get it. I turned that TV off and headed up to do this show kind of like, one of those Friday nights where you're in, you haven't had a drink, you haven't done anything particularly interesting. You find like a movie that's a classic that you like, but you've seen it 20 times. You didn't even finish to watch the end credits because you already know what happens anyway. And you're kind of just tired. You turn it off. You make sure the final dishes are in the dishwasher, and your girl's already sleeping. You head upstairs, and you're kind of like, all right, can't wait for Saturday morning. Like, because I've seen this movie over and over again with Rutgers. I saw the loss and the blowout style of the second half loss coming all the way from the first quarter. And I'm just not inspired by this team this year at this point, and my rage is already gone. Rutgers falls at Washington 38-19. Game was closer than the final score would indicate, although the game was really never in doubt for Washington after some serious blunders by Rutgers early on, in my opinion. Total yards, Washington 579 yards, just a dazzling show by them. 493 for Rutgers, so it's not like we weren't doing things on the offensive side of the ball. 402 passing yards for Washington, 386 for Rutgers, 177 on the ground for Washington to 107 for Rutgers. 29 first downs to 26, 4 of 9 third down efficiency for the Huskies, 5 of 15 for Rutgers. 1 of 1 on fourth down for the Huskies, 3 of 5 for Rutgers, especially towards the end of the game. We were going for it on fourth, wasn't happening much for us. 77 total plays for Rutgers to 59 for Washington. So why did they beat our Hines? Well, we'll talk about that. 9 penalties for 83 yards against Washington, 4 for 31 against us. They lost a fumble. We lost none. Threw an interception. They didn't throw any. Time of possession, we edged them by about a minute on. So kind of crazy. Kind of crazy to see that. We come away with a lopsided loss, but the yardage and whatnot was relatively close. Damon Williams, a brilliant, absolutely brilliant game. 402 yards through the air, 2 touchdowns. I think he rushed for over 100 yards. No interceptions. Sadly, if you're a Washington fan, I really feel bad because the guy's balling out there. You win another game, another conference game. You're 5-1. You're doing it in dominant fashion in the second half, at least, even though I think there's some things we can talk about. But now he goes out and gets hurt at the end. Had he gotten hurt earlier, Rutgers might have stood more of a chance, but it's in garbage time, really. And it's a shame, but kind of revenge for last year. This game looked evenly matched when it comes to yardage and stats and things, but Washington dominates in this, at the scorecard. Rutgers last year, Washington dominated in a lot of ways, but due to fluky things, Rutgers pulls the game out. And so it's a revenge game at home, which I predicted in preseason, but the way this season's gone and the way this game even went, it's not quite. I'm not happy that I predicted it, put it that way, nor is it the way that I thought it would go when I predicted that. So here's when I knew that the game was just not going to go our way. And it's sad to say, but it's just because we've seen it so many times. In that first half, Rutgers comes out as they always do. So they come out, they look great on offense on the first drive. They score the touchdown, just a beautiful throw up that way. He comes down with it, and it's just, Duff comes down with it, and you're just thinking, usually you think, wow, this is encouraging. It's on the road. It's off a bye. The offense is going to be churning. But while I was happy with it, and you like to see it, and you would much rather start off that way than some other way, it didn't get me too excited because we've seen this almost every game especially in conference thus far this season, this team comes out hot on offense. And the scripted plays that Kirk Shiraka installs tend to come out well, and they tend to be firing on all cylinders early. So I didn't think much of that first touchdown other than, okay, this is what we're supposed to be doing. Let's see if we can keep it going. Good start. Let's go. Rutgers defense is what I'm really waiting for. And I'm waiting for Rutgers defense to stumble, and to look like there's something to be desired. And Washington comes out, and the first few plays and whatnot, they look like they're going to have some traction and they're going to go somewhere. But Rutgers defense comes up pretty big, and they get a stop, and they've got to get rid of the ball. And Rutgers comes down, and they come down. They're looking for a field goal. They do connect on a field goal in the first quarter. But where I started to see things really turning the corner for the worst was Rutgers has opportunities in that first half. They get into the red zone several times. I believe they might have gotten to the red zone 4 or 5 times and come away with a total of 3 points in those trips. And that's just not going to get it done. And early in the game, you could tell that they weren't going to get it done because the offense would move the ball all the way into the red zone and then just completely stall out. We saw it against Minnesota with the early drive where they just stalled out. They couldn't get any points out of it. And you saw it again in this game. There was a play where DT Sheffield catches the ball. It's clear. I mean, look, from our vantage point, it's clear. Maybe from his vantage point on the field, it's not as clear. That's understandable. But from our vantage point, there was a lane there for him to get the first down. Instead of cutting it straight up field and grabbing those yards and getting that first down, he tries to kind of scamper back, head towards the sideline, try to get one over, loses the yards, doesn't get enough for the first down. And right after that terrible play, then it's a long field goal. The field goal is not going to happen from that. Look, I've been a fan of Jay Patel. I'm a fan of all of these players. We know their strengths. We know their weaknesses. 45 yards in a hostile environment. After that kind of play, just the feel of it, I wasn't confident that Jay was going to hit that field goal. He doesn't hit that field goal. We were lucky earlier when there was another false start, illegal procedure penalty, again along our line, and we got pushed back 5 yards. Jay still connected, but that was another missed opportunity where we couldn't find the end zone. Our defense, for all of the grief that this defense has gotten, and this is where the narrative of the game, I think, is going to get out of control because I'm already looking on message boards and I'm already listening to fans. And I'm already seeing this narrative that, oh, man, this defense is terrible. Good Lord, this defense is terrible. The offense is okay, but if only the defense. And yes, if you look at just the stats, just after the game, you just look at the stats, it's going to look how many yards both these offenses put up. This is what we thought, right? A lot of people took the over. Most of them are good that the over was correct because of the second half. There were some people, even when it was a low-scoring first half, already saying, don't worry, it's 13-10, but the over is still going to be good because these teams are going to go off in the second half. And one team did go off in the second half, which was foreseeable. And I'm getting there. You're going to look at the stat sheet and say, wow, these teams went off. If only we had a defense that was worth anything, our offense might have been able to hold it down, because that's been the narrative since the beginning of the season. And fans want something positive or some scapegoat to hang their hat on and say, that's the problem. That's the issue. If only we had the defense this year, we would have been better. But the story of this game is bringing to light something that's been rearing its head ever so subtly the last several weeks. And that is that when push comes to shove, in crunch time, in pivotal moments, the offense, that vaunted offense, that celebrated quarterback, those guys, that OC with all the accolades, those guys aren't getting it done either. And early in that game, the defense had a incredibly opportunistic, just I wouldn't even say opportunistic because it was a defensive play where the ball was popped out by effort in a critical situation, in a critical drive, in a momentum changing play. And our offense, the defense gave that offense ample opportunity. If this offense was as good as we discussed them being, as we hoped that they'd be, as the perception is out there in Scarlet Knights land, if the offense was as good as we've said, we would have had a huge lead going into the half because the defense, whether you admit it or not, the defense bowed up, got pressure on the quarterback, created a turnover, played tough, forced punts, and gave the offense short fields, several opportunities to capitalize the entire first half to build a substantial lead, and the offense couldn't get it done. And it's not just one player, it's a combination. Some of the play calls, but quarterback play at some spots, other execution at other spots. I mean, Ethan just slips. It looks like his knee came out. He slips, and it's not the first time. Because last week we had the ball in our hands with plenty of time left, driving relatively easily, and the ball goes through Ethan's legs. Whether that's the center, Zelinskis, whether that's Ethan, whether that's whatever it is, it's the offense. I could see if the offense had just scored against Minnesota and then the defense let up, a touchdown drive in 30 seconds, but that's not what happened. And in this game, the amount of missed opportunities, and I heard Aaron Brightman said it on Mike Broadbent's halftime space on X when he and Alec were talking. Aaron hopped on, and Aaron said, look, I don't know. I think this is going to be another one of those games where we lose in the second half because we missed so many opportunities. We missed so many opportunities that it's going to come back to bite us, and I wholeheartedly agreed with him. So by the time, once we started missing those red zone opportunities, I was already resigned, as sad as that is. And you could call me a bad fan or whatever you want to do, but I'm looking at this analytically, objectively, and I've seen this movie before. And I knew that on the road against a team like Washington that's that potent on offense, that did what they did to Maryland last week on the road, at the end of the game, and if you see my score prediction on the night report Richie O'Leary put together, I predicted 35-28. I gave Rutgers a little more credit, Washington a little less, but it was around that ballpark because I said they have that much firepower late in the game, and we have been known to struggle. Now, how many times? The first drive that Washington comes out in the third quarter, you already knew. I let that go while I was playing with my phone because we knew that was coming. This team has been abysmal in the third quarter for a couple of years now, if not longer. So missing out on those opportunities early in the game was going to be extremely costly, and we all knew it. And it's the same movie we've seen before, and it was once again costly. Extremely costly. What I don't understand is some of the coaching decisions that have continued to happen now are really just leaving me without any answers. And I don't even know what to say anymore about some of these coaching decisions. End of the first half, we're driving, and the sense of urgency. We had a little over a minute left and then 45 seconds, and we had a timeout. And Washington had timeouts. And you know that whether we score a touchdown or we kick a field goal, you want to be in a 4-minute drill. You want to get down there, you want to drain that clock, and you want to score. And you want to score with very little time left on the clock. We were rushing to the line at times and hurrying up. Now, I don't know if that was a strategic thing to try to keep them off balance on defense, but I don't think so. I don't know why we were rushing to the line and rushing with plenty of time on the play clock left to get the ball snapped. I mean, that was 101. I'm watching this and I'm like, why are we waiting so long? Why are we going so quickly? Sorry, it's late. To snap the ball and get the play off when we have plenty of time and a timeout. And we're going to run out of downs before we run out of time. And that's exactly what happened. We kicked the field goal and there's 30-something seconds left on the clock. And Washington capitalizes. They start marching down the field. And then as they're trying to get their snap off when they are running out of time, we call a timeout. We call a timeout for them. Why do you do that? They only had one timeout left. Next play out of the timeout, it's not like we dialed up some amazing defensive play because they throw the ball for a first down right out of that timeout. Then they use their last timeout, which they maybe would have had to use before that, or wouldn't have been in the best position because they wouldn't have been able to collect themselves to get 15 yards on the pass play. And now they use the timeout, and they kick the field goal. Now, was that at the end of the day the pivotal deciding factor of the game? Well, probably not, based on everything that happened before with us missing all those opportunities, and after with Washington turning it up and our defense becoming what we know they usually are again. But it's still just indicative of a team that keeps making the same types of mistakes. And it's a team that's not playing complementary football. It's a team where when the defense is bowing up and giving you short fields and great opportunities, you are utterly unable to capitalize in the red zone or execute on special teams to get points. And then conversely, when the offense is finally scoring and doing some things here and there, like in the third quarter when they get points back immediately after Washington scores. And by the way, I don't know about that 2-point conversion. Yes, he was open in the end zone. We'll talk about that in a second, what happened, but I don't know. Maybe he kicked the extra point. Maybe it's, I don't know. I don't know if it makes a difference. But again, you get those points back in the defense now. Now the defense is just like Swiss cheese. It's not happening. So you're not playing complementary football. I don't know that this team has really played complementary football all season. Certainly not in conference. And it's just at some point, yes, this team, I won't say this team, this program is more respectable now. Yes, this program is more respectable in some ways, by some metrics. Like, you're not going into games like this and just expecting to completely be embarrassed. Okay. But this team, this is not a good football team. This is right now a bad football team. You are what your record says you are. Yeah, you're 3-3. You beat Norfolk State, 2 MAC teams. Okay. You're 0-3 in the Big Ten. 0-3, and you've played some solid teams. And I got a lot of flack for this, from Minnesota fans, from Iowa fans, from Huskies fans. I'm not knocking the Huskies. I think Washington's a pretty good team. I think Iowa has good things about them. I think Minnesota's, they're not bad teams. Rutgers is a bad team. But they're not Oregon, we're going to see next week. I mean, that's a fun homecoming for fans. But you're 0-3 against teams that aren't the upper echelon of the Big Ten this year. So you're a bad team. You're at the bottom of the Big Ten in the standings. You will be there at the end of the year unless some miracle happens and you're magically able to turn it around. You might be respectable as a program compared to what you were. But as a team this year, you're not a good team because some way or another you'll lose the game. Now we can keep saying, and then the coach will say, we're going to get there. We're right at that last level before we get there. And I remember 2 years ago when that question was, are you starting to notice what you did before 2006 when you got there? And he was like, I don't even think about that. Now all of a sudden it's like, well, we're almost to where we were. We're close to getting there. I don't think so, because there's not one thing. Again, fans will point, the defense. There's not one thing. It's several things. It's a collective. It's a complex situation of why you're not good, because overall you're not a good team. It's not just one player. It's not just one coordinator. It's not just personnel. It's not just bad luck. You're just not a good team. You're when the time is there to capitalize, to play complementary football, to win a game, to not lose a game, you fail the test every time. And it's a shame because there's a lot of talent on this team. And it's a shame because not all this talent is even seniors. And it's a shame because I don't know what's going to happen going forward with the missed opportunities last season and then the tough performance so far this season. Ethan Kaliakmanis, 31 of 50, 386 yards, 2 touchdowns, 1 interception. I thought he had a really up and down game. Ethan didn't have the type of game where it was just flat out abysmal. This guy completely lost the game for us. But this is becoming a trend too with the quarterback play. I've noticed that the inconsistency, right? Like he's going to complete passes. He's going to have some really nice throws. I mean, he had some excellent throws at the end of that first half, for instance. He threw a really nice touchdown pass to Duff, even though the guy's huge and he went up and got it. But then there were other times where he's, even if it's not way off and you're not like scratching your head, like, what was he doing? What was he thinking? There's still times where he's a little bit behind the receiver and the guy gets clocked, or he's a little high or a little low or just a little off the route or too early and the guy's not looking for it, not on the same page, or too late. And those little issues and inconsistencies lead to missed opportunities and points left on the board. And now it's becoming kind of a trend that despite Ethan's vast improvement in completion percentage, which is almost unprecedented from what he came from, despite the fact that he is one of the better quarterbacks, I mean, the best quarterback we've had in many years throwing the ball, despite that he's a good leader and all those things, there's now emerging a kind of a constant pattern, kind of an inability to get away from the reality that Ethan is not getting to that next level. And again, you could look at the stats all you want and say, Larry, I don't know what you're talking about. He's played well. This defense is terrible, but you got to watch the game, and you got to watch the ebbs and flows, and you got to watch the key plays at the key moments. There's becoming a trend where he's good. He's better than anything we've seen in a long time. His numbers are very respectable. He's not losing the games for us, but there's limitations. Not physical, not mental, just consistency. Antoine Raymond, 15 carries for 89 yards. He's averaging nearly 6 yards a carry. He is picking up where Monungai left off. Not quite there yet, but putting his head down. He's starting to get, I see with Raymond, he's starting to turn the corner a bit here, where he's starting to churn out like at least 2 yards every time he touches the ball. No negatives as best he can, unless he's like completely collapsed in the backfield. He's starting to really get tough yards. He was electric to start the game. And I don't know if that was by virtue of the defense being off balance because of the scripted plays. I don't know if that was by virtue of, an offensive line with a lot of pep in their step that then, came back to earth after that. I don't know if it was the play calling. There were times where the defense maybe would allow for a better run from Antoine, and we didn't go to him. We started throwing the ball, but then there were other times where he was bottled up, maybe on anticipated rushing downs, and then they didn't give him a chance on different plays when they were off balance. But Raymond is becoming a very, very talented asset for Rutgers, and it's nice to see. Even the commentators are talking about, like, you go from Pacheco to Monungai and now him. And I think Sam Brown would have fit in there if it wasn't for the unfortunate injuries. Benjamin finally gets a sighting, had 1 carry for 7 yards, then no other carries. I don't know why. He did catch a ball as well for 6 yards. I want to see him worked in a little more just to keep people off balance. Still just not getting a ton of touches. Ian Strong, 7 receptions, 124 yards, 17 yards a catch. These corners for Washington, I think it was number 7 and number 8, and forgive me, I don't recall the names off the top of my head. Good players, big corners. They gave Ian Strong trouble all game. They gave Ethan Kaliakmanis trouble all game. You got to give credit where it's due to Washington, where Rutgers bowed up and like O'Neal early on had a sack and Walker was in there. And I thought the pressure from Rutgers defense was better than anything we've seen for all year, really. Give Washington's defense their flowers. Those guys were coached really well. They were putting their hands up to get in passing lanes. They were taught that, look, if you're not going to get to them, put your hands up. They were watching Ethan's eyes, and even though they couldn't get their hands around a ball to intercept it, they were putting their hands up. They were batting balls down, and they were doing work on Ian Strong. And Ian was going back and forth with them. They'd have a pass breakup. They, some pass interference calls that I thought were legitimate. Even on the one where there was an interception that was negated by a pass interference, I thought there was pass interference there. I didn't think it was blatant or egregious, but I thought it existed. I thought he stopped his route and got in front of him on the other pass interference that led to the touchdown. But there were other plays where it was just really good defense, and they were going back and forth with each other, and they were super formidable, big, strong, long corners. And once in a while, we got the best of them, but they were playing hard. And then there was a time where, Duff was kept quiet for a lot of the middle of the game. I don't know if that was play design or if the defense was just doing their job. DT Sheffield, I think, had opportunities. I do think he had opportunities. There were some cushions there that we didn't take advantage of. I don't know why. But DT Sheffield, I think that's what it's so late I forgot. DT Sheffield, there were opportunities where there were cushions for him, but the near fumble, his knee was down, but that was a near fumble, and then not getting upfield. Those are some mistakes. We did finally go deep, to Raymond, and we went deep. And I forgot to mention even Raymond's, reception stats, in addition to his rushing stats, 7 catches for 89 yards as well, and a touchdown. And that was a real nice touchdown. And when Ethan was on and he was completing the ball downfield like that, it looked good. But we didn't go long, I don't think, enough. And I don't know if that's by virtue, again, of the defense or what they were playing or game plan or whatnot, but we didn't go long enough. And give credit to Washington's D. And then as the game wore on, look, we've seen it with Rutgers. And I talked about this on the RU review with Steve Tishner. Is Rutgers getting worn down? I mean, I think when you look at some of these teams who are more evenly matched, I don't think that's the answer. I think there's something with adjustments or maybe, a loss of hope by the end or whatever, but Ethan starts going down a lot more towards the end of that game, and that's rough too. But give them their credit. They were playing those guys hard. Still Strong gets his 7 receptions. Still, Sheffield gets his 6 receptions. Still Duff gets his 3 for 59 yards. Weber was in there getting quite a few receptions, 5. He's a big dude, and he was able to bring the ball down a few times, 5 receptions for 27 yards. So, I just, it's just becoming the same story, different day type thing with this team. If there's a way to lose, they're going to lose. They're going to come out swinging. The offense is going to look proficient when they have scripted plays. And then when the game everybody settles in, adjustments are made, we kind of get stale too, because that's the other thing. I mean, it's how many people have remarked to me about Fletcher and the same roll out, pass that we do to him every time. Everybody knows that it's coming. Everybody knows what it looks like. I think the script may be real good, but the maybe lack of imagination as the game progresses on the fly, in law, we call it, are you good on your feet? In a trial situation, in an argument, they might throw something at you that they scripted that you weren't ready for, or they might play off of something you did. And are you good on your feet? That's the lawyer term. He's good on his feet. That means I'm good with coming up on the fly with something to counter what you're doing. And I don't know how good we are on our feet right now, because it seems like as the game progresses, there's counter punches and punches, and the second half is becoming a trend. We can't keep up. Now, we could have built enough of a cushion this game with all the opportunities we had early to make it interesting, and we just utterly failed to do that. And that's just a real problem. A real problem. So, um, there's really not much else to say. I mean, we continue to have players that struggle. Kosh Sanders continues to struggle. Um, you had a Taj White penalty that was ill-advised. That was part of what helped kind of maybe change momentum, get the game rolling the other direction. But like I said, you can't pinpoint just one thing. It's kind of everything. And it's just tough. It's tough. So I'm sitting here and I'm just like, to be honest, I just find this team and following it and being a fan to just not be fun right now. It's uninspiring right now. You're always finding a way to lose. And what are we looking forward to? You have now an Oregon team coming to town who their hair's on fire. They're probably going to, I don't see why they wouldn't beat us from one end of the stadium to the other. I know our guys have pride. They're going to play hard, and I hope I eat my words, and I hope I'm wrong, and I'll be there cheering too, because I have my pride too. I'll be in my seat. I'm not somebody who sits there and naysays and boos either. I mean, I'm there. I'm cheering. So, I may be a commentator from the sidelines, and you're like, "Who the hell are you? Who are you to say this?" I'm at every game, man. I'm in the game. I'm at the game in the rain, in the heat, in the freezing cold. And I'll be cheering, but that doesn't look great. And you got yourself in a situation where if you want to make any kind of respectable season out of this, you've got to, and David Anderson said this on the preview with Aaron on the Scarlet Faithfully, you got to go on a 3-game winning streak. You got to beat Purdue, Illinois, and Maryland in a row. And Illinois, I mean, the way Rutgers is playing right now, I don't think that there's any team on the schedule that I'm confident they will beat, because they are consistently finding ways to lose, and they are consistently not playing complementary football, and they are consistently shooting themselves in the foot, and they are consistently being outcoached and outplayed in almost every phase and aspect of the game at some juncture of every game. So there's not a team on that schedule, I think, that's a guaranteed beat. Maryland is playing pretty good football. Illinois is ranked 17 in the country. We haven't beat a ranked team, I think, since 2009. Maryland gives us fits when they have good quarterbacks. They seem to have found one. And then forget those last 2 games. I know Penn State's reeling, and we could say, oh, they're 0-2 in the Big Ten. So what? Who'd they play versus who we played? I mean, I know UCLA. I get it. I get it. But that was still on the road, and they still, what did UCLA do to beat Penn State? And don't tell me about Oregon. That's the other loss. What did UCLA do to beat Penn State? They got us cushioned by punching them in the mouth so unexpectedly, so early, that despite how many times Penn State came back, despite how many times Penn State punched back and kicked and screamed and fought for their lives, they just couldn't get past the initial lead, and time ran out. And Rutgers had a chance to do that today against Washington and completely dropped the ball, figuratively and literally. Completely dropped the ball. And it's no one player's fault. It's no one coach's fault. It's no one unit's fault. It's this team, time and time again, failing to get it done. And so I don't see this winning streak taking shape in this season. And if this season goes down without a bowl appearance after losing the bowl game last year in similar fashion, this has been a trend now for last year too. We were dominating that bowl game in the first half. Second half comes, and again, high-octane offense starts going. And what do? Our offense can't play complementary football and keep us in the lead. We throw another inopportune interception, and we lose that game. This is who this team is at this point. A first-half offensive team that can do some damage, but does not capitalize enough to get to put the other team out of its misery. And then in the second half, just abysmal and inept, and just losing game after game. As halftime ends, it's the end of Rutgers' chances to win. And unless something drastic changes, obviously the coaching staff made tweaks on defense. Obviously they did. They shook up some personnel in the interior of the D-line. They shook up personnel, various parts of the field. It paid dividends early. They got Benjamin a tiny bit involved. They fed Raymond early in the game. But other than that, once things settled down, everything got back to normal. Unless something drastic changes, I don't see how the outlook for this season changes or the brand of football that we're playing changes. And I haven't seen anything which would lead me to believe that the time for change has already come and gone. They had the bye week. This was a game where you needed to get back on track. You needed to make a statement. You needed to play a bit above where you've been playing, and they didn't do it. They started off with the chance to do it, but it was that vaunted offense that couldn't get it done. And then once things settled in, it was the same offense and defense that we're used to and we've been used to. And so, look, props. And also, that's the other thing. I mean, that's the other thing. You look at DeMond Williams and Denzel Boston. I mean, Denzel Boston was a beast too in this game. And let me just go look at Washington's stats. Just really quick, their offensive stats, which I meant to touch on. I didn't even touch on those yet. But Williams was 21 of 27, so much more efficient, right? Only throws 27 times, 402 yards, 2 touchdowns. I think I did talk about that, actually. But 13 carries for 136 yards. 136 yards on the ground, 400 yards in the air, 2 touchdowns on the ground, 2 touchdowns through the air. And then Coleman gets another touchdown, keeps his streak going. Roebuck with the huge catch down the field, which helped to set up scores. 4 receptions, 108 yards. Denzel Boston, 5 receptions for 98. Vines Bright, 3 for 50. Evans, 2 for 45. DeGraff, Moore. I mean, guys were getting involved all over the field. So that's the other thing. And I'm not giving the defense any excuses because I think there's so much to talk about with the hire of the coordinator, the personnel decisions, all those things going into the season. I still think it bears discussing, but in the spirit of saying what I'm saying, which is you can't put everything on the defense, this Washington offense is potent. They have good players all over the field. You needed to go toe-to-toe with them. And if you're telling me that going into the season, like, offense just has to keep pace, offense has to keep pace. Yeah, the defense struggled, but the defense did a heck of a job for the most part in the first half of the game. The offense didn't do anything. And then later in the game, Washington's going to get some things going. They're going to start making plays. They've got some really talented players. We came into this game knowing about Boston, knowing about Williams, knowing about Coleman. It's not a surprise who these guys were. So to see them go off and get their numbers is not surprising. We had to keep pace, and we couldn't do it. We couldn't do it. So, Scarlet Knights fans, once again, we're in the middle of the season, and I'm not feeling too good about the way things are going. And I want it to change, and I want it to turn around. But instead of the impassioned yelling from the car that you get at home games a couple weeks ago, and you got, the aggravation last week, you're not getting it anymore. Because now I've settled in, I've accepted what this is, and it's just uninspiring to me. And I would imagine that it's also uninspiring to you. And I know it's uninspiring to the guys in that locker room, to that coach. They might play their ass off. I get it. But this is becoming a whole humdrum type situation. And the air is coming out of the balloon. The wind is coming out of the sails at this point, because you're going to have to get off the mat after this season no matter what. And you've got a new quarterback, a young guy with a lot of talent. You've got guys that are maturing, matriculating. Are they going to stay? Are they going to go? You've got decisions to make. Guys have decisions to make. What's this team going to be after the kind of missed opportunities that we've seen over the last few years, and now the consistent inconsistency every game from every unit that just continues to lose us games? At least back 2 years ago, when we had a strong defense and a struggling offense and a quarterback who could barely throw the ball but could run, at least then we knew who we were. At least then we had a plan for how we were going to pull off games if we were going to pull them off. And at least then we knew how to play complementary football, not all the time, but at least enough times to get us to a bowl and to win a bowl game, to keep the program on that upward trajectory. Now, I don't know who we are. I don't know how to complement who we are. I don't have a game plan to win. And it seems that as the games go on, the plan to win becomes less and less clear. And it starts to unravel more and more. And it becomes the same old story. But guys, it's late. I'm tired of it. And I'm going to sign off. If you are listening on the audio podcast, remember there's a YouTube channel, Night Watch with Larry K. Come on over to YouTube, click the subscribe button, join, become an official sponsor of the channel, hop on board. If you're watching on YouTube, go listen to the audio podcast. It's available on every major podcasting platform. Listen on your way to work. Listen while you're at work. Listen in the car. While you're doing chores, mowing the lawn, whatever it is you do, go listen to Night Watch. Check out all the other content creators. I will be with you again shortly. I don't know which day yet. We're going to keep talking about this team. But for now, Larry K is out.
I know you heard me on the radio flexing. She loved the sound of my voice, it's the best thing. Daydreaming of the jazz all day. Pick up the phone late night with Larry K. I know you heard me on the radio flexing. She loved the sound of my voice, it's the best thing. Daydreaming of the jazz all day. Pick up the phone late night with Larry K.